We are talking about lead conversion today. We've got Alvaro here from CINC. He is the master of building a system and strategy for lead conversion. We've got Jeff Glover, who is the coach in this industry. Jeff sells a ton of homes himself. That's one of the things we love is he is very heavily in production. He knows these skills inside and out, and he knows how to help you replicate them within your team, right? Jeff's going to cover that for us. And then we've got Brian. He's our CEO here at Sisu, and he's going to talk about the culture of excellence and performance and accountability that kind of top this whole thing off, right? So Alvaro, let's kick it off. Stage is yours for the next 15 minutes.
Let's do it. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for having me here. Jeff, awesome to see you.
You too.
So here's the thing. For me, I've seen so many teams growing broke, right? That do more and more and more transactions and end up treading water, not understanding, hey, I did double the transactions I did last year, and I did half the money. And there's a lot of talk in the industry about ROI. And ROI, it's a little bit of a confusing, it's pretty straightforward as a concept, but the application of it can be a little confusing. I have even though I look at ROI, I think I have a simpler way of looking on a per transaction basis at, are you making money or not? Is this a good transaction for you or a bad transaction? There are bad transactions. If you make a transaction and you're keeping less than 10 or 20% of the total GCI of that transaction, that's not good. That is actually generating a lot of noise for you and not really making you money, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to share with you all how I look at it and combine with some numbers from having looked at over 10 million leads at CINC. There's a lot of numbers out there about conversions of people that really don't know, usually not ill-intentioned, just ignorant. And so I wanted to share with you some actual numbers from having looked at almost 10 million leads by now, and let you do whatever you want with that. And then how to get to the numbers that I'm talking about, probably Jeff is going to help you more than I do. So, and again, please interrupt me if needed. So here it is. For me, this is how you check on your profitability on a per transaction basis, right? You have your GCI, that's the money that comes in when you close the transaction, you close the deal, this is your commission. From that, this is money you already spent probably. The lead cost per sale is money you spent way before when you were buying the leads that actually got you to that transaction. Then the question is how much of that money goes to your agent, and so you have your splits, and that's your gross income per sale, right? Your GCI minus how much you paid for leads and how much you gave your agents in that transaction. And then, of course, you have your fixed costs, right? And those, you have to allocate them to the total number of sales that you have, and then you get your net profit. Now, the good thing about these overhead costs down here are these are the only ones that if you make more transactions, they become usually smaller because it's a fixed cost, and the more you make, you get to spread it over more. So that's good. That's why I focus a lot on gross income per sale, because that's the part that if you have a bad gross income per sale, the more transactions you make, the worse off you are, right? And so that's certainly something you don't want. And so that for me is, when you're looking at this, my recommendation is that you need to be grossing a 40% at least out of every transaction that happens in your team, right? Because again, after all, you're going to have some overhead costs. Even if you keep that pretty tight, or if you make them a lot of transactions, you're going to be paying some 20% there, and your net profit starts to get super thin, right? So without being too complex, I always tell my clients, whatever you do, any kind of lead generation, you just need to see on a per transaction basis if you're at least grossing 40%, right? So what does that mean? That between your agent commission and your lead cost per sale, you need to be under 60% if you want to have a 40% gross income. Now, for most teams, if you're really in a 50-50 split, that means that your lead cost per sale, which we're going to go in a second, needs to be under 10% of GCI. So what does that mean? That your total money spent on lead generation to make that deal happen should not be more than 10%, maybe 20%, but try to get it under 10% of what the total GCI of the deal is, right? That's more or less similar to people that tell you that you have to have a 10 times return on investment, right? For every dollar you spend, you're getting $10 in GCI, or you're only spending 10% of your total GCI on lead gen cost, right? So I'm going to focus very much on this today, which is the lead cost per sale, because I assume you already have looked at your commissions and splits. Again, there are coaches. I don't know, Jeff, what you recommend here. I know some coaches really pushed for the 60-40 model. Do you usually go for 50-50, or what's your model, if I can jump you in early?
Yeah, no, on the buy side, 50-50 is our model.
Okay, so if you're in a 50-50 model, then you need to be very efficient so that you know that you're not spending more than 10% on lead generation. And again, I'll make it quick. When you have systems like CINC, right, you have part of the cost that is a fixed cost, like the platform cost. Yep. That's a cost that, again, I put down here in overhead cost per sale, because if you do more sales, then that one sort of matters less. The important thing is how much are you paying per lead and what your conversion is. And that means how much are you really spending to get one more deal through online lead generation. So let's look at this. Let's look at what's the cost per sale in early funnel, sort of SEM, Google lead, right? I'm going to say that the average cost per lead is $6. Big caveat here is this is all depending on the market very heavily, right? But our average cost per lead at CINC is more or less $6. I'm going to put an expected conversion of 1%. Now, we're going to talk about conversion a little bit. There's a lot of fantasy in this concept, but basically what the 1% means is I expect you, if you're a good client of CINC, to convert 1 out of 100 leads, which might not seem that exciting, but it actually is. Because if you see you're buying 100 leads at $6, that means that your lead cost per sale is $600, right? So I'll pause for 1 second. This is an important concept that if anyone is not understanding, please put it on the chat, and Zach will speak up for you. But basically, I'm saying for you to get one more deal out of CINC, you would have to buy 100 leads. And when I say CINC, it can be choose your SEM provider, and if they're good, you should be achieving a cost per lead like the one that I'm talking about, and a conversion like the one I'm talking about. But basically, to get one more deal, you're going to have to buy 100 lead more. Of course, you have to work them too, which is what Jeff is focusing a bit. You're going to have to buy 100 leads. You're going to close one, and you will have paid a total of $600 for that closing. Now, for the average in the US today, with houses that are around 400K and a 2.8% commission, your average GCI is $12,000. That means that your lead cost per sale is 5% of the GCI. You've paid $600 for a deal and you've made $12,000. That's a very good lead cost per sale. 5%, that's great. It keeps you, if you're in a 50-50 model split, it means that your total cost, variable cost is 55%. The 50% you give to the agent and the 5% that you invested in leads, and you get a full 45% in gross margin, which is pretty good. This is the same thing as saying, for the ones that really like ROI, that you're getting 20 times ROI, right? Is you spend $600 and you got $12,000 in the deal. That's 20 times ROI. So we'll talk now about what conversion is feasible and all of that, but I want to start by saying, in an early funnel, in an SEM, Google lead, if you're getting a 1% and you're paying $6, that is a fantastic return for you. You're getting 20 times your money, or different way of seeing it, you're only paying $600 for every deal, which is a 5% of the GCI that you're getting. And that's really, really good. So again, I'm going to be focusing more on lead cost per sale, right? So now comes, okay, but these numbers that people throw around, 1%, I've heard 5%, 3% conversion. My sales team many times says, hey, no, we talk about real numbers, but our competitors drop in random numbers like 3%, 4% conversion, which I disbelieve immediately. If you had a 4% conversion on a $6 lead, you'd be paying nothing for your lead generation. You should do infinite of that if you could. The truth is, if you get to a 1% conversion, you're going to be getting 20 times your money. That's great results. And I would rather you get 1% conversion at scale than you having 4% conversion out of 10 leads a month that you get and you hammer till they die, right? And so for me, let's see what that 1% means. Now, this is where I go. I looked at over 10 million leads at CINC, looked at what my clients report to me out of what they actually converted, and these numbers do not come from a NAR study from 1980 where they asked a bunch of agents what they thought and the agents responded this is actually looking at leads and seeing how many converted to appointment, how many converted, basically what you do with Sisu. I've done it at scale at CINC, right? So why do I say 1%? Is it because it's a nice round number? No. These are, if you see at this chart, these are all my clients put side by side from one to the other. My best clients are here on the left, and the clients that are not doing that good are doing on the right. And the y-axis is how much have they converted. And so you can see, I went up. Oh, there. You can see that I do have some clients that are converting at 4% or at 3%. That is not necessarily better, though. It's great. It's always good to have better conversion, except if to get that conversion you have a very small volume, that's not that. Yes, you'd be super profitable on a per deal, but you're doing 5 deals. Okay, that doesn't tell me much. Many of these guys that are around here, between the 1.2 and the 0.8 conversion, are the guys that are doing 100 transactions, 200 transactions with us in a year, and they're making tons of money out of highly profitable transactions at scale, right? So, but what I want to say is, if you're with CINC and you're struggling, or you're with someone else and you're struggling, if you don't think the 1% is really attainable, I'm telling you, and again, when I say 1%, this is from total number of leads to actual closing. So I haven't discounted yet the leads that get trashed. I haven't discounted yet leads with bad phone numbers. This is everything in, right? So I'm here to tell you that the 1% is very realistic. There's a bunch of people doing it. And again, it's not easy, though. When people say it's not like the default, most of CINC clients are the top 10% of realtors in the US, right? So this is not an easy bar for you to compare yourself to. This is actually people that really, really, really know what they're doing. And again, Jeff is going to be talking on the second half of this about how to get to this 1%, right? But I'm here to tell you that it is real, that a lot of people are doing it, and it's something that can be achieved if you are on it. Now, one big concept I'm not going to go because of time and looking at where I am, I'm not going to go deep on this, is one thing is if you look at a cohort, and another thing is you look at what you did this year. When you make the conversion analysis of what you converted this year versus the total number of leads that you received, some of your conversions correspond to years before. But I'm not going to go deep there. All that I'm going to say is this conversion is achievable in your second or third year of doing lead generation in a certain channel. The first year, because you're only going to be seeing half of those conversions, it would be very difficult for you to get to that 1% conversion. That's why this is a long-term play. But I will say, though, this is something that actually, I'm going to ask Jeff one more question. Maybe he saw it already. What do you think is the sweet spot of when most of leads close from SEM, Jeff?
The time frame?
Time frame, from when you get them till you close them.
I mean, we focus on 6 to 9 months. I mean, we really try to zero in on that time frame. I mean, obviously some are faster than that, some take longer than that, but we're looking at like 6 to 9 months for most of the top of funnel leads.
And this is my biggest surprise out of this analysis. It's a really optimistic surprise for me. It doesn't change the fact that you should be focusing on long-term follow-up too, but 60% of closings do happen in the first year, and of that, 40% of closings happen in the first 6 months.
Yeah,
which is something that really surprised me when we found out. Now, that still means if you start with CINC today, you don't get all your leads on day one. So it still means that the sweet spot is around the 8 months from when you start, because again, by the 3rd month, you got a good bunch of leads, and if this close within 6 months, that you're talking 9. But it is very interesting to see that if you really increase or decrease your lead gen spend, the impact you will have in your closings should be happening immediately in the first 6 months. So that was a good finding.
Yeah. Just add one thing, Alvaro, and I think this is something I've noticed from observing Jeff, the way your team operates, the way a lot of top teams operate, is you can look at that 6 to 9 month conversion time frame if you can look at all of the metrics, not just closings, right? If you can see like the number of appointments set, met, signed, like who are we now nurturing from that 6 to 9 month cohort? If all you're looking at is closings, that doesn't really tell you the whole story. And that's something that top teams have kind of cracked is that kind of strategy. So
fully agree. And measuring your appointment ratios is as important as your closing ratios. I just skipped it today in question of times, but we have numbers for that too. So one thing, here's where I'm like, okay, so I've shown you a few slides back that if you're doing good top of funnel lead generation, it's not easy, but if you're doing it well, you should be making significant profit on those deals, right? And the question is, well, but there are other methods and they're easier. And so I've tried to put side by side, and I've tried to be fair with the alternatives here. So of course, the best way you can do is if you give your own referral to one of your team members, you didn't pay anything for that. Of course, you've spent time and effort and relationship on it, but that's your best deal, right? But if I forget this column on the left, then you have, okay, I can be doing top of funnel, right? Where I can be spending 5% in lead cost per sale. But what happens with like a traditional hand raiser lead, like a Zillow old style lead, where I'm paying $400, right? And let's say that you're converting at 10%. I don't know if that's too optimistic or not. Some people tell me they don't. But even if you're converting at 10%, that's a $4,000 that you're paying per deal. And again, that's the thing, right? I'm going to go over this. This is certainly it's easier to convert a deal where you only have to call, you're going to convert 1 out of 10 people you call than 1 out of 100. But the labor of doing the calls is not that expensive. And you're paying $4,000 per deal, which is a 33% of your GCI is spent in lead gen. If you're paying a 50-50 split, that means you paid 83% before allocating any of your overhead costs, right? So you're going broke. These deals, if you are buying leads at $400 and converting at 1 in 10, those deals are not profitable for you. So you either need to be at a higher conversion, like at 20%, or you need to be getting leads that are not more expensive than $200. That's something for you to take home and look. Now, Zillow Flex or the referrals seem almost worse, where it's like, well, if you're paying 40%, then you're done, right? Because you pay 40% to Zillow and then you pay 50% to the agent, you spend 90% of the deal already, you're dead. But there's a big but here, which smart team leaders will tell me, well, the good thing there is I don't pay the 40%. I split with my agent. So I only pay 20% out of the total GCI. I'm paying half of what it's going to Zillow, right? Now, that is for me what I call the team killer model, right? Because for me, you've outsourced everything you do as a team, and now let's look at what that looks like, right? So you make $12,000 in a deal, you pay $4,800 to Zillow or to whoever the aggregator is. Then that means you're making $7,200, you split it half and half. Basically, you're making a 30% gross margin. And again, I still think that if you're doing less than 40%, your deals are going to be almost unprofitable, right? Because you have to pay on your overhead after this. So you'll be at less than 10% actually from the deal. But the other part that you're doing is you're burdening your agent with a reduced split, right? They went from having a 50% split to having a 30% split. And so what happens, what my clients keep complaining on is, well, after a year, I lose all these agents. Now, for me, I've always defended that you are going to lose agents after 4 or 5 years when they made enough money and they are confident enough to get their own system, to get their own leads and do the thing. But it takes 4 or 5 years to get to them there. When you're in an aggregator program and that is your main way of growth, then your agents are seeing that you're actually not really doing much for them, right? The leads are getting paid by Zillow, and then Zillow is doing the follow-up, and they're just at the receiving end of that. So why would they accept 30% then when they could get 60%? And if it's not with Zillow, it's going to be with Ojo or one of the many, many HomeLight, many aggregators out there. So my main point with this is, and look, CINC has a referral model, which is ProLink. And I always say to agents, look, these deals are not going to be highly profitable for you. So do them as a complement to whatever you're doing. but don't set up your growth out of this model. So in summary, if I go back to this, my position is you need to have deals where you are making at least 40%. So if you're paying a 50% split, you need to be under that 10% lead cost per sale. Maybe 15%, but you shouldn't be going over that. In a top of funnel system, that means you need to be at a 1%. You can be at a 0.5% conversion. You would still be in 10%. If you're under a 0.5% conversion, I'm never going to tell you spend more money on lead gen. I'm going to tell you get a coach and get to convert better, or use this system better. But if you are at 1% conversion, I'm going to tell you put more money on it, right? Because you're making 20 times your money. This is a great deal. Just put more money at play. Get your agents, as long as you're not drowning them on leads, get them more at-bats and get more closings. If you have an expensive lead source where you're paying like $400, $300 per lead, then you need to make sure that you're converting at 20%, because if not, you're never going to get to a lead cost per sale that is profitable for you. It may feel good, your agents may feel good, but in the end, it's like eating cake, right? Eating cake feels great, but it's not good for you. So you need a good amount of vegetables of meat to grow your business on, and you can add some cake if you want. You cannot attempt to live on cake, because that is very, very, very short-sighted, and you will lose your agents and you will not be profitable in the process. So that's it. If I leave you with anything is think about the lead cost per sale. It's easier to think of that than ROI in general. Just make sure that whatever you're spending on leads, incremental, right? Not your whole system or everything. Whatever you're spending on the number of leads that you need to make one more sale, try to make sure that it's under 10%. And with SEM, with a good provider, you need at least a 0.5% conversion to get to the numbers where this is working for you. Once it's there, pour fuel into the fire. I have a lot of very successful clients that just realized late that they didn't spend enough. Spending $1,000 a month will get you over $100,000 in GCI. Most of my clients that spend $1,000 a month are making $200K a year in GCI from those leads. So that's where, once you get to that 0.5 to 1%, just start putting more fuel into the fire. And that's it. Good
man, Alvaro. Thank you. Let's keep this moving, because I know, Jeff, we got you till the top of the hour, and everyone. And I'll just preface this a little bit with, we look at a lot of numbers across Sisu teams, and we look for trends, and we look for things that, success leaves clues. And we found that a lot of the top performing, top converting teams are coached by you, Jeff, and your team is one of those teams too. So excited to hear from you. Floor's yours.
Yeah, I'm excited as well, and it's great to share the floor with Alvaro. Obviously, we've been a long time user of CINC, and it's a pivotal part in our business. So thank you for everything you guys have done from the technology side to help us. All right, I'm going to jump into the techniques that we're using right now, specifically to increase our conversion. Of course, as real estate agents, we know there's a lot of change happening in the industry, and I don't need to bring you up to speed on all of that. You guys have heard enough about that, but we're going to talk about how we're winning with those changes. By the way, for those that are not familiar, my name is Jeff Glover. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I've been listing and selling real estate now for 22 years this May. And probably the biggest difference between myself and a lot of those out there is I'm in it with you. I'm in the trenches, listing and selling real estate. Myself personally, over the last decade, I've averaged just over 100 transactions a year myself, and our team does somewhere between 900 and 1,000 homes a year annually. So let me share with you exactly what we're doing to have that success as it relates to specifically on conversion. I guess you should probably also know you have an opportunity to win with us as well. If you're not familiar, the training and coaching organization, Glover U, it's probably one of the fastest growing training and coaching companies on the planet right now. We've got agents from all brokerages, all brands that are taking advantage of the stuff that we teach. So go check that out. Best piece of advice I can give you is just download the Glover U app and take advantage of the daily message. It's a free message that I send out every day, Monday through Friday. It's all designed to help you list and sell more homes. So that's the Glover U app. It's free in your app store. Tons of free resources, including a lot of resources that I'm going to reference right now. So first things first, to increase conversion right now, moving forward, we have been, and I want to encourage you to touch your appointment set, specifically on the buy side, your buyer consultation, and on the list side, your listing appointment. Touch your buyer consultation and your listing appointment 6 times from the initial appointment set to appointment gone on. That's right. You're going to touch that appointment 6 times before you even meet them. Well, how am I going to do 6 touches, Jeff? Watch. You're going to have a text message after the appointment is set, thanking them for the appointment. Number 2, you're going to call them and you're going to go through a pre-qual. Now, we have a seller pre-qual script. It's been around for years. You can find it in all of our scripts. By the way, all of our scripts are online at gloveru.com. For those of you that are coming to our event this summer, which you'll see Sisu and CINC there as well, we're unveiling for the first time ever our buyer pre-qualifying script. But I'm going to call the appointment prior to meeting and go through a series of questions. That's the second touch. The third touch is they're going to get an email from me with a video explaining everything that's going to happen on our first appointment. So if it's a buyer appointment, it might talk about how the showing is going to work. If it's a buyer appointment, it might talk about how the buyer consultation is going to look. If it's a listing appointment, it's going to talk about what my listing is going to look like. They're going to get an email from me with a video message. That's number 3. Number 4, they're going to get a physical pre-appointment package. Every single appointment I go on, whether it's a buyer or a seller, they're going to get a package from me either overnighted or next day, or I'm going to have it dropped off at their house. Buyer, we've had seller appointment packages for years. We're unveiling our buyer appointment package this summer, but just to give you an idea, a few things that should be in it: a copy of your resume, a copy of your reviews, your plan of action, maybe your buying power checklist. Everyone moving forward should have a buyer pre-appointment package, no different than we've had a seller pre-appointment package. These are all designed to help you with your conversion from the time you set the appointment to the time they meet with you. That's number 4. Number 5, they're going to get a text message the day of the appointment, a text message the day of the appointment, letting them know how excited you are to meet with them and reminding them of the appointment. Of course, sometimes people need a reminder. Finally, number 6, they're going to get a phone call from you 60 minutes out. I can't tell you how much time this has saved me, because you get the, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, we're still stuck at the airport, we haven't landed yet, or we haven't got our bags yet, or whatever. 60 minutes prior to the appointment, I'm calling him and letting him know I just finished up my last appointment, I'm on my way, and I cannot wait to meet with him. If you want to see, one of the biggest challenges in the industry over the last 3 to 5 years has been appointments set to appointments held, from appointments held to contract signed. Those 3 ratios, all right, which of course Sisu is going to help you know what those are. Appointment set to appointment held, that number has been declining for a lot of real estate agents through the last few years. Call it technology, call it, things that are competitive, that are challenging us in our business. That number has been going down. And the other number that, of course, you have control of is appointment met to contract signed. And this point right here, increase my conversion by touching the appointment 6 times, is going to help you with both of those ratios, set to met and met to signed. That's number 1. Number 2, I want you to update your buyer presentation materials. We're talking conversion of leads. I want you to update your buyer presentation materials to show everything you do. Update your buyer presentation materials to show everything you do to help buyers secure homes. Everything you do to help them secure homes. Do you have a buying power checklist? Here, maybe consider adding this. Start tracking this. Ready to write this down? I want you to write down DOS. Okay, you're familiar with days on market on the sell side. On the buy side, I want you to write down DOS. It stands for days out shopping. What is your average DOS from the time you meet a buyer till the time they get their offer accepted? Is it less than 30 days? Is it less than 45 days? Whatever that number is, I want you to start tracking that, and I want you to use that as a marketing tool and as a reason of why a buyer would work with you versus the competition. So here's how it would sound. I average my buyers get their offers accepted within 27 days of the first time we go out shopping. My days out shopping is just under 1 month with every buyer I work with on average. That is a number to tout. That is a number to brag and boast about. That's certainly something to promote and talk about when you're talking with buyers. Write this next one down under updating your buyer presentation materials. I want to know what your list price to net sales price ratio is. List price to net sales price ratio. All right. you guys know in most MLSs, your number's probably somewhere between 95 and 101% for listed to sales price ratio. But what is your net sales price ratio on the buy side? Meaning when you subtract concessions, when you subtract closing costs, when you subtract if an appraisal comes in lower, what was the final net selling price of that deal, of all of your deals totaled up in the last 12 months versus the sales price? Because watch, it's going to become a big deal when all of the buyers all of a sudden have to face perhaps paying commissions if that's not going to be part of the negotiations. So if I'm a buyer's agent and I have figured out that I'm averaging my seller's list price to net sales price of 96.5% of the asking price, but my board of realtor averages 99%, well, then that means I'm actually saving buyers 2.5 points on the average buyer who works with me is going to save 2.5% on the sales price. Maybe that's your fee right there that just got covered in that. I want you to start tracking your list price to your net sales price ratio. Use that as a marketing tool. The third one I want you to start tracking and promoting to help you increase conversion is going to be your offers written to deals accepted. Offers written to deals accepted. I want to know how many of your offers get accepted the first time around. I want to know how many offers of yours get accepted the first time around. Why is that? Well, because if you tell me that 78% of buyers get their offer accepted the first time around with me, that is an absolute reason why I would want to work with you versus maybe an average agent who all I've heard over the last several years is we've written offers, we've written offers, we've written offers, we've written offers. None of them get accepted. None of them get accepted. And you show up with 78% of the offers that you write get accepted the first time around. I want to know what that number is, and I want you to start talking about that as part of your buyer value proposition. And these also become buyer marketing tools, things that you can promote and talk about on social media. Add those to your buyer consultation, add those to your marketing. It will help you with your lead conversion. Next, if you want help with your lead conversion, I really need you to pay attention to your presentation. And I'm not just talking about your presentation when you show up at a buyer consult or when you show up to list a house. I'm talking about your presentation online and on social media. People are doing more research on you today than ever before. It used to be you would go meet with them and then they would decide who they're working with based on what you had to say and how you appeared in your presentation, your professionalism. Today, people are Facebooking, Instagramming, YouTubing, whatever, TikToking, you name it, before you get there. I'm convinced in many cases, the buyers and sellers today, 50% of their mind is made up by the time we meet with them. Their mind is already made up based on what they saw online or what they saw on social media. And for those of you that work older clientele and you're thinking, no way, not my clientele, Jeff, their kids are doing the research for them. Mom, Dad, who are you meeting with? I know you said you had a couple agents coming out. Mom, Dad, you guys are going to be buying soon. Let me make sure I get you in touch with the right agent. Who is that agent you said you wanted to meet with? Let me look them up on Instagram. Oh my gosh, they haven't posted anything in 13 days. Mom, Dad, I think you might want to talk to this person that I know. Trust me when I tell you, your presentation online and on social media matters now more than ever before, and I hope you're paying attention to that, even on the buy side. Don't think it's just for sellers. It's on the buy side as well. Next, if we want to increase our conversion, okay, this goes back to our good old-fashioned sales skills. People make decision, all right? As long as we have buyer consultations and listing presentations, and as long as we're showing homes physically in person, people are going to make a decision on who they want to work with based on how you make them feel. Well, how do you make someone feel a certain way? Based on what you say, what comes out of your mouth. So how do we get better at what we say so that way we make people feel better about hiring us? Well, sales skills does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be cheesy. It doesn't have to be like 1990s, like press hard, these are cheap carbon closing lines or anything like that. Our modern day sales skills, the way we look at sales skills at Glover U is 3 ways. Number 1, it's asking great questions in a methodical order. That's it. Asking great questions in a methodical order. And most of the scripts today are written in a very methodical order. Our scripts get updated every 18 months. Why? Because I'm in the trenches with you. I know what you're going through. You all have access to them. You can download those in the Glover U app or at gloveru.com. Asking great questions in a methodical order is number 1. Number 2, on being a better salesperson, actively listening to their answers. actively listening to their answers. And I'm not just talking about like, because you're probably like, Jeff, this is so basic. Like, come on, I don't need you to tell me how to actively listen. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you met someone in the last 30 days or 60 days and you met them for the first time and within 10 seconds you forget their name? That ever happen? Yeah, all the time. Why is that? Because we're thinking about what we're going to say next instead of listening to what they're saying. Okay, I guess I can see that. So then how can I get better at this, Jeff? Well, you're going to want to ask deeper questions based off their answers. So number 3 is go 3 deep. Every time you ask a question and they give you an answer, I want you to ask another question based off of their answers. For my team leaders in here, those of you that are leading teams, leading buyer's agents, leading listing agents, this is an activity you can do with your teams. If you were to walk into our office at Monday at 10 a.m., you'd come into our office, you'd see all of our agents in the conference room. What are they doing? They're sitting there writing out questions. We're actually teaching them how to ask questions within the questions so they develop a higher level of rapport than the next agent or the next competitor in town who's using VAs to call on their leads. The VAs who are just following a script, we're asking the questions within the questions and we're building a higher level of rapport. Absolutely, we got to get really good at the sales skills. They're not going anywhere. And the last thing I'll leave with, because I see I'm short on time here, is the 3 rules to live by with online leads. Okay, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Speed to lead is rule number 1. You guys know that. We could talk about that until we're blue in the face. But more important than ever today is frequency in the follow-up. When I look at our agents side by side at who gets the best results, it's actually not the guy or gal who's quickest to respond. It's the one who follows up the most. So we have taught agents for years the same method that we follow. It's the 3 by 3 by 3 by 3. 3 calls, 3 texts, 3 emails, all within 3 days. 3 calls, 3 texts, 3 emails, all within 3 days. Well, Jeff, that's like 9 reach outs. Well, watch. People aren't keeping track. I travel around the country and teach this audiences all over, and they're like, oh my gosh, Jeff, that's really aggressive. No, that's only aggressive because you are keeping track. The consumer is not keeping score. They're not keeping track of all the times you reach out. Why? Because today consumers are inundated with notifications. They're inundated with text messages. They're inundated with phone calls, with emails, whatever. Your stuff just blends in. I'm just trying to catch them at the right time. So if you wanted to just see a quick increase in your conversion, not saying speed to lead is not important. It's one of my 3 rules. Speed to lead is number 1, but number 2, your frequency and your follow-up is just as important, if not more, than speed to lead. And then finally, rule number 3, don't ever forget that lower end leads are your friend. Lower end leads are your friend. Don't turn up your nose at lower end leads just because it's $100,000 or $200,000 below your average sales price. Those leads are the most loyal. They're the fastest to respond in many cases. They have multiple transactions coming over their lifetime. Many times they're investors with multiple homes or they're looking to invest in multiple homes. Many times it's somebody looking to buy something for their family member or their son or their daughter or their ailing parents, and they've got $1 million home that they want to sell after you do a good job with them. Lower end leads are your friend. In fact, sometimes we see some of our highest ROIs are with the lowest end leads if we actually track the future business we get from that lead source.
And Jeff, even from that first time, again, if you're only paying like $600 for a deal, like you can serve that $200,000, $300,000 client and make profit in that first transaction.
That's right.
And then do everything that you're expecting.
Correct. You're more likely to get multiple transactions from the lower end leads than actually the higher end leads.
Yep.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, good. Listen, hopefully that was value for everybody. If you want more, come see us at our retreat this summer. You're going to see Zach there. We're going to see a group from CINC there. I know we've got over 1,000 people coming to a beautiful resort town up in Traverse City, Michigan. Tickets are going fast and they're super reasonable. They're like $399, $499 online, 4 days of sales training, content, hard-hitting lead generation, conversion, a lot of this stuff that we're talking right now. You can find that in the GloverU app or at gloveru.com/retreat if you want to join.
Hey,
us.
Jeff, before you drop, I have a question for you. By the way, that was absolute fire. Thank you for joining us today. One thing I wanted to ask you, you're talking about this pre-listing packet and now a packet for buyers. I think this is critical. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've been focused on here at Sisu is actually helping our teams get that in the client portal. I know you guys are still physically delivering that, but a lot of our teams are actually leveraging that and, in the client portal, they're delivering this packet that they can then follow up on as you suggested. And those follow-ups are critical. You have to communicate with them. I think you said 6 times. Otherwise,
6 times.
They're likely not going to show up for that appointment, right?
That's right.
So anyway,
the set, as you've seen, I mean, you guys know the numbers better than anybody. The set to met ratio has been slowly dropping over the last few years. And so we've been thinking outside the box. How do we keep that up? And that's one way.
Yeah, I've been watching that with my wife. I've coached some of my wife's top agents as well as her team leaders. And, it's been really interesting for me to watch that number because I remember when I sold real estate for a couple of years, I was like a 90%, right? And now seeing them down in the 60%.
Well, it used to be, hey, they set an appointment, they're loyal to their appointments. It's not the same today. So you got it. They're getting hit up with all sorts of offers all the time. You got to stand out, and that's one way you can do so.
Yeah. Well,
thank you, Jeff. I know you got to jump, and you're a busy man, but that was amazing. We'll let you go. We're gonna keep going, so don't log off yet because if you're listening to what Jeff, you can go, Jeff.
All right, see you guys.
I'd love to keep you. But if you're a team, I want to speak specifically to the team leaders here who you probably do a lot of this stuff. You probably have excellent follow-up. You probably do great. You have great lead conversion yourself personally. And where we see a lot of frustration is like, okay, I'm great at that for myself. How do I replicate that across the team? How do I get the rest of these agents that I bring into my world to adopt and to be as disciplined as I have, as what I know will make them successful, as what I've made success, what has made me successful, right? Brian's our CEO here at Sisu. If you don't know what Sisu is, we are the leading analytics platform, and we're the only one with full transaction management built in this industry. And what's really unique about Brian is there is nobody in this industry who has seen as many in-depth Sisu dashboards with conversion ratios, numbers, and he's deep in what these teams are doing, not just what an agent does to convert leads. How do teams get 50 agents to convert like the team leader, right? That's what Brian has seen more than anybody in this industry. Brian, I'm really excited to hear from you and jump in. I've got your slides here, so I'm going to pull them up.
Great. Well, while you're pulling those up, Zach, I just want to share a few things. Jeff shared a lot of things that are super close to me as well. One of those is he shared that listing, right? If you have a listing price, what are you actually selling these homes for compared to that original listing price? These are the kinds of stuff you can get out of Sisu. And I just, I talk to a lot of my salespeople right now. I talk to a lot of them that say, hey, there's a lot of teams out there saying, oh, well, when I get a little bit bigger, I'll get Sisu. When I get a little bit bigger, I'll need to know that information. The one thing I want to share with you guys is Sisu was actually built for a small team of 5 agents. And it was built for that small team of 5 agents because that small team was a team that I dove in to help grow their business for 2 years of my life. And that team happened to be my wife's team. That team of 5 agents is now 100 agents and doing, 1,000 transactions this year. That being said, Sisu is made for those small teams so that you can have the systems, so that you can have the information, so that you can make these decisions, so you can improve these conversion ratios. Everything that Alvaro and Jeff have talked about today, Sisu is there to help you know this information real time. So that's what I want to dive into. And again, I want to thank you guys all for joining us today. Zach, let's go down one slide.
I got it pulled up. Yeah, go ahead.
Zach talked about a culture of performance, and we've said culture of accountability, culture of performance, culture of excellence. You can call it whatever you want, but the reality is, if you are running a business and you are not publicly running this culture of excitement where you're having leaderboards publicly displayed, or even sales contests, where if you want to improve a certain metric, for instance, one of the most important metrics today that Jeff hit on, but is appointments, and I'll go with buyers. This has been a focus forever, is listing appointments met to signed. But now, more than ever, that buyer appointment met to signed is becoming more and more and more important. And by the time August rolls around, we need to make sure that all of our agents are confident and being able to really project that. So just make sure you guys have this culture of performance in your business. Make sure it's exciting to your agents to compare themselves to their peers. Agents are salespeople. They are competitive. They want to see how they're doing compared to their peers, and just doing that one thing alone, that's the lowest hanging fruit you can do, is put dashboards up like this or leaderboards up like this in your office. We call this the Great Wall of Sisu, but you put these up in your office. It makes a massive difference in the engagement and the culture of your business. So let's move on to the next one. Alvaro talked a lot about conversion of leads, and some of you guys asked the question, well, what time frame is that? And Alvaro was talking about 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but a lot of you guys, Alvaro was talking mainly about SEO leads, or pay-per-click leads.
Yeah.
And I want to know, I want you guys to know that no matter what lead source you're paying for, you need to know how people are converting on those. And so we talked about this cohort analysis, and many of you guys are probably going, what is a cohort analysis? And any of you guys that have ever raised capital know that anyone on the financial side, they're looking at your business through cohort analysis. And what that means is, what they want to see in the case of this would be, hey, of all your leads that came in, or of all your appointments that got set, let's just say in the month of January, where are those at today for this lead type? And if you don't know that on your business, it's critical that you should know that on your business. One way to learn this on your business is to spend hours and hours and hours in spreadsheets. Another way to know this in your business is to just run your business out of Sisu, and it'll just be their second nature, real time, all the time. But if you're running your business out of Sisu, these are the types of things you'll know, so that as you're paying Alvaro money on those leads, you can challenge him on that 1% and go back to him. And as you get the 1% conversion, like he said, go all in at that point. Because if you're getting the right conversion, that's when you need to go all in. But not only do you need to know conversion per lead source, but you also need to know conversion per agent. And so, Zach, let's jump into the next slide. This isn't our ROI report that's in Sisu. And again, if you're managing your business out of Sisu, you're going to know this kind of information. But the thing you're going to know is you're going to know what your ROI is on every type of lead source. I hate seeing teams throw money at the wall, right? Just I'm going to try this lead source. I'm going to try this lead source. And before you know it, you have a dozen lead sources. And these dozen lead sources, they're just not working. And one of the reasons they're not working is because you're not focused enough, because it's such a broad focus of lead sources. You're not focused enough on the ones that are converting. So the thing to know is, what are my top lead sources? Maybe you choose your top 4 lead sources that are converting, so you have a solid foundation. You have 4 legs to your stool of your business that are building that foundation to your business. And when you get those 4, now it's important to focus in on those and spend more money on those, the ones that are working. And even more importantly than that is knowing which agents on your team are converting which types of leads. I think that the Shark Tank is the worst idea you guys could ever do, in letting every agent take every type of lead. And I'll tell you this, I've watched this over and over and over again. Again, we have 3,600 teams on Sisu right now. I've watched these teams. I know what they're doing. I know what works. And what doesn't work is to give, and I'm just going to use, Alvaro used Flex as an example earlier. So I'm going to use Flex as an example here. If I give an agent a Flex lead and that agent has a bad experience, and then I give them an OpCity lead and they have a good experience and they convert and it was an easy close, when I give that agent those 2 lead sources, which of those do you think that agent is actually going to follow up with? It's obvious, right? They're going to follow up with the OpCity because they had a good experience with OpCity. But then you have the agent who's completely the opposite. And these are the 2 same agents on your team that says, hey, I had this horrible experience with OpCity, but with Flex, I got this $1 million deal on Flex, and on Obsidia, I got this trailer home. And, like Jeff says, take all homes, because that trailer home, I've seen that turn into 5 different cells. So, but I just want you to know that if your agents have the mindset of a certain lead source not being quality, they don't follow up with it. And you need to know what kind of follow-up they are doing on that lead source. And this will give you that. You will know exactly the return on your investment per lead source and per agent per lead source. Make sure you guys know that, so you're giving them the right leads. And this is what will allow you to really start executing on the pay-per-click leads that Alvaro is talking about here, versus just giving them those, further down the funnel leads that are easy to convert, but you're not making nearly as much money. So know that information. And then the last thing I want to share, I shared this briefly, but like before Sisu, I was working with my wife in her real estate business, and we had a CRM, and then we had Google intake forms, and then we had Trello boards, and then we had spreadsheets for reporting. We actually had spreadsheets for setting goals, and we had spreadsheets for managing commissions. And then we had a back office system at the brokerage that we had to use. And the one thing I'll say is, doing 100 transactions, it was a year at that point, 100 to 150. It wasn't that obvious how time consuming it is to take data out of one system and put it into another, and to do that 5 times for every transaction. And it's really, really complex. And I've had team leaders come up to me over the last few years and say, Brian, I'm never going to be able to get beyond 500 transactions. And I asked them, why not? And he said, my ops support more, not my sales. If my ops team can't support more. And so I asked him, will you go all in with Sisu? Because this was a Sisu customer that was still using Google intake forms and still using Trello. The whole value of Sisu is if you run all of that through Sisu, now you have real-time reporting at your fingertips 24/7, no matter what information you need, and your systems are streamlined and automated, which means instead of having to go from 5 people in his admin team to 10 to close more transactions, all he did is use a single platform to close more transactions. And he actually ended up closing 900 transactions that year, which was over $1 billion in closed volume, just without adding any additional people. And I think that's the thing that sometimes we struggle with, is we think it takes people to grow a business, when in reality, it takes systems to grow a business. And if you have your systems dialed in, it will help you be able to do more transactions on a transaction coordination side. It'll help you to be able to recruit more agents on an agent onboarding side. So just make sure you guys dial that in. And again, the whole point of dialing that in, though, is so that you can know your numbers to make better decisions. And all the things we talked about today, from Alvaro's, what are you paying per lead? What are your conversion rates? To Jeff talking about, hey, what is my conversion from I went on this appointment and I got it signed? That's critical that you guys know that today. It's more critical than ever. So let's make sure you dial that in also. And then I think, Zach, let's just open it up to questions, to anyone that has questions.
We had, I think, one there while people write down about how CINC and Sisu combine and the cost and those kind of things. I remember one of my masterminds with some of my best clients. These are people that are doing a lot of transactions with us. And I remember them asking, well, couldn't CINC already give this kind of dashboard? Which, of course, we can. Now, Sisu is a company that has focused on making things as understandable to people as possible, right? And I always go, it's one more transaction in a year that will pay for the extra of having the best dashboard in the industry, right? And so, again, I hope our presentation today, at least my part, is not about CINC and about what technologies you should be using. What it is the revenue side is so much more important than the cost side when things are working well. And so for me, getting you to have a good funnel of leads coming into a CRM that you can use to follow up with a good coach that is keeping you accountable for it, and you having the right technology to see that and be able to hold your agents accountable to, will pay itself so many times that the cost will be irrelevant, right? And again, I know I'm trying, again, this doesn't need to be CINC and Sisu. My main thing is just look at it this way, in a cost per sale way. Make sure that you're not throwing money at the feel good, easy solutions that are out there, but that you're ultimately paying $4,000 per deal that you close. Again, whether you pay them before or you pay them after when the deal is closed is really not as important as you think. Because if you have a business, that money will keep flowing. So don't focus on the easy solutions. Have a good way of getting leads in and holding those people accountable. You have to have a dashboard. If you don't know what's going on in your business, then you're never going to be making money out of it.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, you know, for those of you asking, if you have CINC and Sisu, like that's all you need to run your entire business. I have someone asking, it looks like Addie's asking about, you know, can you link Google Forms to Sisu? Sure, you could. We have a fully open API, but the way you're going to get the most benefit is to use the intake forms that are in Sisu, and to eliminate using a third-party form, to eliminate using a third-party Trello board to manage all of your project management, task management, getting things from contract to close, and having it all in a single platform, which is focused on, that platform, Sisu, is not only focused on streamlining and automating your business and your systems, but also making sure that you have real-time reporting at your fingertips 24/7. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question on that. We definitely can replace that. Zach, you may want to address if you have CINC and Sisu. Well, CINC and Sisu, you should be printing money. That's absolutely.
I could not agree more. I literally am going to frame that and put it on my wall, Brian.
But me being always the skeptical one in all of this, I want to, I have a lot of clients that also have struggled and then struggled through conversion, right? So there's a reason that not everyone is doing it, which is it takes someone with long-term view to know that this is a 2 to 3 year game. You cannot get in for a year. Knowing that he has to hold agents accountable, which again, even if you have the Sisu dashboards, if you don't have the discipline internally for you as a team leader to do it, then there's no amount of information that will do it for you, right? Now, if you are that leader that want to invest long-term and that want to hold your people accountable, then you need the right systems, right? And having good visibility into what you're doing is critical. There's so many teams that can be successful but are just going blind at it and just doing transactions and knowing what transaction is leaving them only at 10% of the GCI or is leaving them 40% of the GCI. They in their minds count them the same. That's why you need a Sisu. That's why. And one thing that I was going to propose, I don't know, Zach or Richard in the background, there's, and this is open to everyone. You don't have to be using CINC. We do like a monthly online conversion call day where we do objection handling. Now, again, my recommendation is you should have a coach like Jeff that will really hold you accountable. But at least if you want a free taste or at least to see how that is, we bring everyone together on a call where online people are setting appointments. And a lot of this is what Brian was saying. It's belief in the lead source, right? If people will always gravitate to the cake, to the things that are easy but are not good for you. So you need to show the results of eating your vegetables, right? And so that's why if we can afterwards share, I think anyone that wants to join, whether you want to join and call your leads with us, which is what I would recommend, or you want to just join and watch, to get opportunity to seeing it just play out and seeing how this can be successful once you put the effort and the discipline on it.
I love it. Well, it's been super helpful. Hopefully it's been everything and more that you came to this class for. You can't solve lead conversion in an hour, but I think we did a pretty dang good job of what can be done in an hour. We got a couple questions about integration, CINC to Sisu. Your agents just work out of CINC. If they're using CINC properly, that's about it. They just need to use the CRM well. And in fact, by adding Sisu on top of CINC and putting a leaderboard up like Brian showed, you're instantly going to have transparency into who's picking up the phone. And we found minimum your number of calls made will go up 30% just by making it visible. right? Because your
Yeah.
top agent has to be on top of that leaderboard, and the rest of your agents just don't want to be on the bottom, right? So you raise the floor and the ceiling about 30%.
Fully agree.
So your agents will be in sync 100% of the time doing their lead follow up. The minute they move over to Sisu is when they go on a first appointment, or when they fill out those intake forms, when they put somebody under contract or take a listing, that kind of stuff.
It's way less work for the agents. They'll thank you for it. But anyways, thanks everyone. Recording will be in your inbox right after this. Thanks again, Alvaro, and thanks Jeff.
Alvaro, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Goodbye.